All right, one last thing, and then I'll be on my way for this evening because I got to prep for the radio tomorrow. The House Parks radio program, Mega Worldwide, is on Saturdays, 9 to 11 Pacific time, with our dear friend Johnny Million, and Philip Bittner will be joining us to talk about what's going on in Ukraine. Lots of progress there, and the European Union, members of the European Union, and mainly the NATO nations, I would guess, have just supplied Ukraine with 2 months specifically of ammunition to get them through the winter, enough for them to meet all their goals. So there was a big panic attack about that in Russia. We'll get to that later. Now, I mean, most of you, obviously, in my audience, think that Israel controls the U.S. And so, I mean, can you really blame either Trump or Joe Biden for? I mean, can you obviously Israel is making Joe Biden tell them to slow roll the invasion, the push into Gaza, to work on the hostage release that they made him do. That was Israel making Joe Biden do that. And then when Trump gave them the Golan Heights and moved the embassy and then recognized Jerusalem as the capital, Israel made Donald Trump do that. He wouldn't have done it on his own. And yeah, there we go. So let's how Israel controls the U.S. Let me guess, APAC and Jews. Let's see. We may not do this whole thing because what the fuck?
How the Israel lobby controls some of the information, not just the information, but what the government does.
I see. Some of what the government does is controlled by the Israel lobby. Obviously, puppet masters.
And why it is that you see a vote of 97-0 by the U.S. Senate to send more aid, quote unquote, weaponry, etc., to Israel, to not demand a ceasefire. This is back several days ago.
Right, before the ceasefire? Before the current ceasefire?
Right.
To demand, that's how it happened. So before the ceasefire that was going on when he taped this, and the one that the United States specifically negotiated, everybody was voting to not do it instead if they were.
But
yeah,
97-0. How is it that you end up with it that one-sided, that biased? How is it you end up with both corporate parties?
I don't know. Why aren't there more people in the Senate who are pro terrorists helicoptering into a music festival, raping and murdering women and dragging their dead bodies through the street so people can spit on them? Why?
Exactly on the same page on this, not even a soul voting against it. And then in the House, only a handful, I don't know what the actual number was, I think it was maybe 12 or something, voted against the so-called support for Israel. And
can you be more specific? There's been like 3 fucking bills. And they haven't done the actual Israel. They're tying Israeli aid to the Ukrainian. That's still working its way through. I don't know. Like there was there was the vote to affirm that Israel has a right to exist recently. That was the one that was tabled. And it's maybe the vote he's talking about, which is not aid. It's simply just a non-binding resolution to recognize that Israel should still be a country.
Yes, part of it is simply by paying and bribing these politicians, right?
Why? Why would you have to bribe them? With what?
Part of it, and you can view all these numbers at Open Secrets. Part of it is just by giving huge donations to these politicians in the United States. The number one on the list, by the way.
If Iran has billions of dollars and they're funneling it to Hamas, why didn't Hamas just buy the politicians? Why don't they just funnel money, just outspend them? They've got the money. Or would the constituency have an issue?
For senators all time, so he's not a senator now, but he was, number one on the list of receiving money from Israel lobby groups, which is APAC, and there's some other.
Sorry, who was?
And yes, part of it is simply by paying and bribing these politicians, right? Part of it, and you can view all these numbers at Open Secrets. Part of it is just by giving huge donations to these politicians in the United States. The number one on the list, by the way, for senators all time. So he's not a senator now, but he was number one on the list of receiving money from Israel lobby groups, which is APAC, and there's some other, NORPAC, I think is another one. There's a few others. Number one on the list of senators all time. Can you guess who it is? Anybody want to throw in some guesses? Joseph Biden, number one recipient of Israel money.
Hold on one second. Let's see. Where do you go? Let's see. APEC per senator. How much? Let's see. APEC secretly pouring money into millions into defeating progressive. That's the response to this one. Let's see. Joe Biden, number one recipient of Israel lobby money. Something like that. What do you think? Pro-Israel money to Congress. Let's see. From Open Secrets. This is the, okay, so yeah, this is what he's using. He's using Open Secrets as far as this business. You want to know why? Hold on one second. I'll show you also. Let's see. Joe Biden candidate, because he ran for president and they paid it. This is Joe Biden. Yeah, 4.2, 228,614. Menendez, Hillary Clinton, all of them in the 2 million zone. Lieberman, 1.9. Do you think they had to buy it the way, or he was just the most supportive? You want to see why he might be the guy they chose to give money to it? I'll show you real quick. That's why. Whoops, hold on. I'm a Zionist. How Joe Biden's lifelong bond with Israel shapes war policy. When Joe Biden met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with his war cabinet during the visit to Israel, the U.S. president assured him, "I don't believe you have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. I'm a Zionist," meaning that Israel should exist. That's the group of Zionists. Like, Zionists has gotten a bad rap, but the Zionist movement initially was that there should be an Israel state. That's the difference. Now there's a difference between, like, the modern, like, Orthodox, there's like an Orthodox Zionism idea, which is like the conspiracy theory group, which believes that, there shouldn't be any Palestinian territories at all. That's what it gets mostly associated with, but that's what, anyways, this is the old way of saying it, but whatever. Politicians and generals gathered in the border tell, according to U.S. officials, Biden is of Irish Catholic descent, used similar words in the past to profess his affinity, but the moment, which has not been previously reported, illustrates how Biden's decades as one of leading friends of Israel in American politics seem to be guiding him during a defining crisis of his presidency. Biden's connection to Israel is deeply ingrained in his political DNA, said Aaron David Miller. Whether he likes it or not, he's in the midst of a crisis they'll have to manage. Reuters interviewed a dozen current and former aides, lawmakers, and analysts, some of whom said Biden's current wartime embrace of Netanyahu could afford the U.S. leverage to try to moderate Israel's response in Gaza. Now, this is the part that really stands out. So Biden, there was a story that came out, and it's been in a few of the biographies about Obama and about the Obama-Biden administration, that Biden said the way you get Israel to behave itself is to hug it tight. That was his words. Hug it tight, or because if you distance it at all, they will find other support. And if they're not listening to us, if they don't view us as a deep ally, they'll just act rogue on their own. And that could lead to them attacking Iran or nuking Iran at some point out of a sense of panic. If they think they're alone out there, they'll do a bunch of crazy shit. So the better idea is to get them, is like he said, hug them tight. That was the idea.
To politicians.
It sounds like they've rewarded him for his deep commitment.
Number 3 is something like number 3 on the list is Hillary Clinton, even though she wasn't in the Senate nearly as long as Biden was. But
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? 60 fucking years. It's of all the people that are in that list. Also, he's the one who served in there the longest, which may have a lot to do with it. Yeah, this kind of or it served the longest and was the closest or whatever. So McConnell is still not as close, but McCain was way up there. He was in for a long time. Ted Cruz, 1.2 million. Durbin. And this is, by the way, all cycles, all senators, sort by amount. Money to Congress. Hold on one second. interest groups, ideology to state. Hold on, I got to shrink this back down. Control minus. Yeah. Okay, and this is, by the way, industries in this sector. Pro-Israel. Ideology, single issue. It doesn't say, interestingly enough, which one we're talking about. Those pages are based on contributions from PACs and individuals giving $200 or more. All donations took place between 1989 and the current cycle. Data for the current cycle were released by the Federal Election Commission on Monday, March 20th, 2023. Feel free to distribute or cite this material, but please credit Open Secrets or whatever. Okay, so this is data from 1989 to now, and I guess Jews individually giving $200 or more over the years from 1989 is why he has those numbers. And as a matter of fact, that would point to the fact, which Lee accidentally makes, that all these folks, like Robert Menendez, there you go, and Hillary Clinton, and even Joe Lieberman, and Mitch McConnell, and all these people who served less time, and because during the election cycle post-Trump, that Joe Biden raised a shit ton of money when he was running for president, that they will add to this, I guess. This is all senators, period, by amount. Let's see, by name. Let's look at the writs down here. By state. Okay, so here's the other two. Delaware. Okay, candidate by state. All senators. Is this broaden out? I guess not. Okay. I guess because he's president now, they just, whatever. These guys are no longer there. So these guys aren't in the state anymore. But then we get to Alabama. There's Louisiana. Surprisingly little money. Yeah, Delaware for Maine. Olympia Snow, $142,000. But George Mitchell, $1,750. Just individuals giving money. There we go. And then Marsha Blackburn was at the bottom of this one. Yeah, here's New York. 2.3 million for Hillary, 1.7 million for Schumer. Kirsten Gillibrand, 566,000. Alphonse D'Amato. Yeah, so most of it, this is New York money. And here's Oregon, Ron Wyden. Ron Wyden's got 1.2 million. I would argue that even Lee Camp would not argue that that Ron Wyden's somebody who's for sale necessarily, but whatever. Again, people donate. This is anybody who votes more than $200, not the lobby.
So yes,
this is an illusion, by the way. I would like to point out that fact that according to Open Secrets, individuals from 1989 to now, any person who's considered supportive of Israel who donates over $200 is, there you go.
Part of it is just bribing them, right? Part of it is paying for their campaigns and they stick with it. But
it's also, they support candidates who really do believe.
An important aspect of it that is not really talked about enough is the fact that they also threaten politicians who start to go against Israel, start to support BDS, even just saying things like Palestine should be free. These things that you and I may take for granted, even just saying things like that. What they do is APAC, these others, NORPAC.
Well, because APAC and NORPAC and these other groups, and I guess anybody with over $200 to give to a politician since 1989, all look at Palestine should be free as coded language. Some people say it, I think, with a certain innocence and a belief that they mean Gaza and the West Bank should be self-determinant, and there should be a two-state solution. That's how most people, I think, view it. But APAC and a lot of the movements around it, the people that show up at marches organized with Palestinian flags and that kind of stuff, when they say Palestine should be free, they mean not just Israel, by the way, not just fuck the Jews in Israel and wipe that out, but also reclaim Lebanon or Jordan.
The Israel lobby groups, they will fund a candidate.
Also, let me just point out that, as I showed you in that little thing, that when he says Israel lobby groups, that's a lie, because literally the number he is citing is anybody who donates over $200, where one of their primary issues is the existence of Israel or support for Israel, which is a huge, especially in New York City or other cities where like that's a major issue, is a lot of fucking people.
To kick that guy or woman out of office. And they may fund them to some crazy amount in order to try their best to get them out of office. And that aspect of it will not show up on the donations, right? Because
yeah, it will, but only if the person that they primary or run up against will gets elected.
You find out that someone lost an election. It's not, you don't often connect it to like, oh, the Israel lobby was carefully making sure that person lost their election. So
how do they do that? How does the Israel lobby? Yeah, he's saying the exact same thing the right-wing nut jobs are saying. The globalist Jews are against the U.S. and puppet mastering it. How does the Israeli lobby, and this is, Cenk does this a lot too, this idea that you can buy elections, or that the Israel lobby, by, I don't know, dumping a bunch of money or supporting a candidate and allowing them to buy yard signs and shit like that, is enough to get that person over the hump. Is basically buying that election because people are so dough-headed and fucking stupid that that APAC can hide their secret Jewish cabal behind the veneer of running a black candidate in an area just that supports Israel versus one that doesn't, who in a debate will say they do versus the other person who will say they don't if it comes up. Where's the secret? Where's the fucking secret? Again, Citizens United had an enormous impact before the internet and the ability to buy like Facebook ads became a thing.
The current biggest example, right, would be Rashida Tlaib. Now, they want to get her, they desperately want to get her out of office. She is one of a tiny number of politicians in the House who say free Palestine, who
voted against Israel's right to exist by voting present.
Who say that Israel is an apartheid state, who
which it isn't.
Actually use those words, who voted against the quote.
Right, and that's why do you think the Israeli lobby and American Jews in particular who are concerned about the existence of Israel would want to push back against that? Is it just because Israel's a fucking like religious theme park that they sell tickets to, and so it's just money upon money or whatever? The problem I have with this kind of mentality is that it makes everything oil. Everything is oil with these motherfuckers. Everything is just who can be bought and sold for what. There are no true believers in this. And the problem isn't, and you'll never, if you wanted to solve this, for example, you want a two-state solution, or you want quote unquote free Palestine and this stuff. If you just attribute this to money buys elections and these people pay off these people because nobody buys this shit, they're just finding somebody that they can run against them and they're just paying for it. And the fact that they're paying for it, and it's all, again, the money and blood libel aspect of the Jewish myth, we'll put that aside for a second, which is just fucking gross. But even then, you're not even solving the fucking problem that you say you're seeking to solve, which is if you have true believers and you think what they believe is wrong, then the process of convincing them is going to be a long and arduous one. And if the vast majority of people in the United States or any particular district, including Rashida Tlaib's, and she's going to more than likely lose in the next election, if she doesn't lose the primary first and get a Republican in there who goes, I'm a least friend to Israel, but we need to fix crime in our area. Like, believe me, they're gonna move somebody in there as well. But Democrats, in the area that where there may be APAC or NORPAC or any of these other groups who may be supporting Israel, maybe, going after and trying to primary her for this particular reason, also are looking at the fact that the vast majority of voters will ultimately, they have to believe that spending that money on that person that will support Israel will get that person elected. Because if the vast majority of the people in Rashida Tlaib's district don't believe Israel should exist, or have, or believe that their representative should vote present whenever a non-binding resolution about the existence of Israel should come to the floor, if they believe that, then no amount of money from the fucking Israel PAC is going to change anything. They just didn't think she would go this far. Yeah, pro-Israel is $60 a barrel, exactly.
More aid to Israel. And they are doing their best to fund opposition to her and get her out of Congress, because just that little tiny handful in the House is too much for the Israel lobby.
Yeah, this isn't a diversity thing. They're going after her because she specifically doesn't believe that Israel should exist. Of course, if the APAC lobby is a hammer, and if you suddenly become a nail because you're like, I don't even think there should be an Israel, of course they're going to go after you, dumb fuck. And of course the people in that constituency who are seeing this stuff may give them an actual case to be made. Oi.
Because just that tiny little bit of truth is dangerous.
It's not the truth. If it was the truth, then no matter, they couldn't put a candidate up that would get her knocked off. If she's representative of her district and her district actually believes that, then all they'll do is they run a bunch of ads like Rashida Tlaib doesn't believe Israel should exist, which would drive more of those fuckers out to the polls. If that's the general consensus in her district, then all their ads would do is shore her up.
They, of course, got Congress to censure her just a few days ago for daring to.
They just got it. They got him to do it.
Say that Palestine should be free. But
no, for saying from the river to the sea, and then voting in a way that voting present on whether Israel should exist at all. So the idea that she's like, I'm saying free Palestine, like the idea that she's saying free Palestine, like you and I more than likely say free Palestine, which is we believe there should be a two-state solution and that the people in Gaza and the West Bank should be able to have self-determinate governance, right? Well, I've been a two-stater for a long time. I think most of us have. That's how we believe. And when we say free Palestine, that's what the fuck we're talking about, right? That's what most people are talking about. When Rashida Tlaib says it, she could, up until the vote present on Israel's existence, she could have said, that's what I mean. I believe in a two-state solution, and I want the people of Gaza and I want the people of the West Bank to be self-determined. She could have said that and gotten away with it. She could have sold that as an idea to both her constituents and the American people and said, I actually believe in a two-state solution. She didn't have to say it out loud, all by saying free Palestine. Just let it sit in the vast majority of people who believe in a two-state solution and have for decades. We would go, oh, okay, that's what she means. That's what she meant. Even though she didn't, let's be abundantly clear. That's not what she means. When she means from the, free Palestine, she means from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free of Jews. That's what Rashida Tlaib is saying. That's why she got censored. She didn't get censured. She didn't get censured because she just said free Palestine. She said what she said because she means Israel shouldn't exist. Period. At all. That's why she voted present. And if you're going to talk about somebody who's bought by a lobby, for example, or is captured by their ideology and cannot have any wiggle room, there's more of an argument when you have the vast majority who believe in a two-state solution, who believe free Palestine, again, means that that Gaza and the West Bank should either have a joint government that looks over both places or even separate governments, but that they can be, their own states and they can thrive and they can interact with Israel peacefully, because I think that's how most people view this. You should be okay. She wouldn't have gotten censured. She wouldn't have. And even after the censure, she follows it up with, she votes present on a resolution that Israel has the right to exist. Linda says, you're wrong, Hal. That phrase initially did not mean what you say. Please research it. It means it now. I'm telling you again. All right. And again, I don't know if you mean you're wrong about me saying it means the two areas mean free Palestine or the river to the sea idea of brooming everyone out, because that, again, that's the question. The question is now, what does it mean to her? Doesn't matter what you're or even my take on what it should mean. And I think most of us, and chat room, I'm curious. Most of us in the chat room believe in a two-state solution. Yes, in general. Right? Just, that's it, right? I mean, I do. I think that's what, and I think when most people when you say free Palestine, what you mean is that Gaza and the West Bank should either be free on their own as two separate entities or bonded together and under one rule of the Palestinian Authority or the PLO back in the day, or one version of it over time from the attempts with Yasser, right? That's what we mean. That's what you and I, in a colloquial sense, when we say free Palestine, that's what we're talking about, okay? And that's the assumptive use of that phrase in this country most of the time. When people say that, when they're walking around for the fucking sign that says Free Palestine, I, in good faith, assume that if I cornered them and I said, you know, what do you mean by Free Palestine? They'd go, I believe the Palestinian people should have the right to self-determination, and that Gaza and the West Bank should be, you know, the Israeli government shouldn't blockade them, and that they should have their ability to govern and not have sanctions or any of that shit on them. They should be able to interact. Okay, that's where we want to get to. That's where I want to get. That's where I think most people want to get. So I would assume that that's what I'm assuming good intentions in those people, okay? Because I think they mean well, right? Even if they're walking right next to somebody who is completely full of shit, hates Jews, and wants Israel to end. And the vast majority of these big marches, it's like 80-20. 20% of the people that are there are like, Free Palestine. I believe they should, you know, there should be a Palestinian state that self-determines alongside Israel, and they should be able to act together in peace and harmony. And the other 80% at these fucking marches are like, fuck the Jews. If you look at what happened in Sydney or what happened in London, a bunch of these, that's in general. And I know this is a gross generalization. It might be 60-40 where you are, but even in general, if I walked up to one person and asked them, even with my belief that it's about 80-20, that 80% don't believe in Israel existing, my assumption when I talk to this person, if they say Free Palestine, is that they mean well. That they mean a Palestinian state that exists in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank, and that they can have some, right? That's right. Yes, all Western nations support a two-state solution, including Biden. Exactly. Right? And there is no apartheid state. It doesn't quite work that way. Apartheid is a totally different thing. It's just we use that word because the elimination of South African apartheid worked as a political movement, so people are borrowing those words. It does not apply materially. And again, you have to solve for the problem you have, not for the problem you can accuse someone of. But in this particular instance, Tlaib, but why Tlaib required to define it? Because she's an elected representative. She doesn't just represent herself and her own personal beliefs. She represents a district. And that's exactly the point I'm making. And when she said what she said, when she used those phrases like from the river to the sea and Palestine, you know, and Free Palestine and Palestine will be free and all that, and like she used most of those phrases intermittently, I, like a lot of people, was kind of okay with assuming that what she meant was, you know, the two-state solution. That Gaza and the West Bank should be able to live in peace and harmony with the Israelis and their surrounding countries. And that should be that. No more war between them. There's no reasoning behind it. You know, that should be how I would give her the benefit of the doubt. I think most of us would give her the benefit of the doubt in the situation. This is what most people did. Now, the Congress voted to censure her because everybody around her, even though it wasn't necessarily put out in the news much, except in I suppose in some areas of Breitbart and some other like low rumbling New York Times articles, the specific way she meant it, the people around her, the people that interact with her, the people that talk with her in committees and see her in the hallways and work with her as a fellow congressperson or staffers interacting, know full well that when she says Free Palestine from the river to the sea and all that kind of stuff, she means the end of Israel. She has an extreme view compared to everybody else in her caucus, even much less the vast majority of Democrats, and I would argue the majority of her constituents. But you could ride over top of it and just kind of blow it off because all she said was Free Palestine, and when I hear Free Palestine, I think of a two-state solution. So do you. But she voted present on on a non-binding resolution that Israel has a right to exist. Not Israel has a right to defend itself, which might be a militaristic thing, which might rub her the wrong way. Exist. Now, Thomas Massie from Kentucky voted against it. I don't know what the fuck that was about, except maybe he's trying to be the new Ron Paul or Rand Paul and like, I vote against anything that we shouldn't be voting on because it's stupid, it's a waste of time. Does that ballpark, does that get us on the same page and show us how bad faith this dickhead is? It was a Freudian slip where I said bad face.
Here's how bad it is.
This is how bad it is.
So there is another politician in Michigan. He's a wealthy businessman named, last name's Nasser.
Yeah, just look it up.
First name
Yasser.
do? Is that it? Anyway, I'll call him Nasser. Anyway, wealthy businessman. He's not running against Rashida Tlaib. He's running for the Senate in Michigan. And watch what he had to say as to what they did to try and get Rashida Tlaib.
Oh, this is the guy that he's running for Senate, and he says the APAC offered $20 million for his campaign, like a super PAC support, if he would run against Rashida Tlaib. Out
of office. The amount of money being thrown around.
I was offered $20 million to withdraw from the senatorial race and run against my friend Rashida Tlaib. The pro-Israel lobby will go to any length to remove any
APAC prepares a $100 million challenge to squad members
from the U.S. Congress that has any opposition to their agenda and their...
Why would they go to... Okay, I have a real quick question. This guy's really quiet. It's hard to hear what he's saying because his audio is playing really low on here. So I feel you guys when you... Here's my question. So APAC allegedly goes to this dude, offers him $20 million to run against Rashida Tlaib, drop out of the Senate race, which he's going to lose, and run against Rashida Tlaib. And they don't know that he's against the existence of Israel. They picked this guy to APAC, the American Israeli Political Action Committee, or whatever they're going to pay this guy. They didn't bother to vet this dude. Clear on the basic fact, this guy's, what's his name? Nasser. Yasser. They didn't. You don't think APAC checked this dude out and whether or not he differs from her political beliefs about the existence of Israel before they offered him $20 million to run against her? This doesn't seem hinky and bullshit and full of shit. Yeah, exactly. Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, nope, wrong one. Bullshit! That's right. To go to here. I call bullshit. I like, honest to God. Lee Camp is still mad his RT money dried up. Yeah. I mean, this is a guy who has to like restart from scratch, and he thinks that RT intentionally folding its tent and fucking off it was Joe Biden running them out. Yeah. So Mike, Lee Camp had a show on Russia Today for years. So Vladimir Putin paid this motherfucker's rent for the better part of a decade. And when the Ukraine war started, RT shut down its Western outlets for a couple of reasons. One is they were fairly certain that as much trouble as they were having in their own country with like that woman who came out and held up a sign, no war, and stopped the attack on Ukraine and stuff, and they had to get rid of her. They were fairly certain that it would be even harder to keep people from, I mean, obviously Lee Camp, they could keep on a fish hook. He wasn't going to shit on the Ukraine war. He was going to applaud it and call them Nazis, I suppose. I'm speaking hyperbolically because I don't fucking know. We never got a chance to find out because they went away. And they dropped it because even if Lee Camp would support Ukraine or would say what Russia did was wrong, he wasn't going to be allowed to say that if he did feel it on RT, ever. Okay? RT was not going to let that fly in the United States. That's why they shut down the RT in the United States. And insofar as RT itself, it's on the fucking internet. It's not blocked in the United States because it's no longer on cable because these dumb motherfuckers shut down their New York office. And then I think their UK office as well, and their studio there, and fired everybody because of the war, because they're basically battening down the hatches. It was a fucking propaganda ministry, but you can't have an actual outlet for the propaganda in the country that is supporting the person you're attacking. Putin had no dollars to give to RT. Well, the concern is that they would run out of money during this or not be able to pay these folks because of sanctions, and that these folks would start spilling the tea or telling the truth or whatever. And instead, they all just got fucking kicked to the curb. And he was one of them. Lee Camp worked for all the shit, and this is the other thing, for all the shit about bought politicians, who's paying your bills, You know, you are on the hook for whoever pays your fucking bills. This motherfucker worked for Russia Today for the better part of a decade. And we're supposed to assume that he is the exception to the rule. That he said whatever he wanted, and he was hired because he had total freedom of fucking speech at Russia Today, and that they shut down because the U.S. government, which did no action to shut them down in the United States, because while they were an affiliate of Russia Today in Russia, they were incorporated in the United States. So they would have been, I guess, gotten around sanctions. Especially, maybe they would have had to be, like, financially, they weren't totally self-sufficient, so they would have had to funnel money through, but that's their fucking problem. The reality is, though, if it was a money-making enterprise in the United States, it would have stayed open. Yeah, Redacted Tonight was the same shit. Yeah, that was on, yeah, RT was his other thing. One of the reasons why he called his show Redacted Tonight was to hide what RT meant, so that his show could benefit from RT.com and not draw a lot of attention to the fact that he worked for Russia Today. But again, I'd like to remind you that if you take money from an organization, they own you. They tell you what to say. You don't have any freedom whatsoever. If a politician gets money from a super PAC or whatever, they are owned by that super PAC, and they cannot vote against them, even if they do. And there's a myriad of areas where they do, and in negotiations where they go against what the hardliners in a country want, or even, like put limitations on aid like Joe Biden is doing. Even if you do that, it's because they told you to, or they let you, just to give you fucking cover. It's all a big fucking, like, these are all dollar bills with fish hooks in it. You're all the baby on the Nirvana album cover. You are. Not Lee, though. Lee can work for Russia Today for a decade, and everything he says and is allowed to say is his choice. If they had kept the doors open, Lee, if he felt that, you know, that the rape and murder of women and children, the sodomizing of children with like metal objects, the castration on camera of a POW by Russian soldiers, if he felt for a moment, and I can't imagine why he would, that was wrong, he could have said it on Russia Today, and they would have let him. He just never really brought it up anywhere, and even since. Now, he's on Rumble now, and, you know, Rumble gets a lot of its seed money from overseas. And there's a lot of, like, fake views that get stacked on Rumble because they're trying to artificially push it up into the YouTube zone. And it's not working, but, you know, it's better than nothing, I suppose. And they got, you know, basically, you know, Lee effectively looks like Russell Brand's stunt double anyways. So maybe people, they figure people with old Trumpies with bad eyesight won't know the fucking difference, right? Yeah, locals, shit like that, same thing. But that's the thing that sticks out the most, is that he can get money from Vladimir Putin directly, basically, effectively signing his checks every week for years. And he says what he says, and nobody can stop him from saying what he says, because he never would even think to push back on anything that Russia does naturally. He just agrees, I guess, or just he has his bigger fish to fry. He could bring it up, but he's got other stuff to do. It's the Canadian girlfriend of issues. He could bring it up if he wanted to, but you guys just wouldn't understand. He can do that. You can't. If you're running for office and somebody likes your support of their cause, if the nurses union gives you money, they're a special interest. The fuck do nurses as a living have to do with teachers or firefighters or police or mine workers, whoever? They're a special interest. And if a special interest group like the nurses union gives you money because of your support for nurses, and you actually believe they should be better paid, because, like in my case, my mom's a nurse and I'm acutely aware of how underpaid and how difficult their job is, that it's not because I had those ideas and they go, hey, here's a candidate that understands our point of view, that agrees with us, and therefore we're going to pay him, we're going to give campaign support to this person because we need an advocate that gets us. It's not that. It's that no matter the fact that my mom was a nurse, no matter the fact that I sat by while she and her fellow nurses had a lawsuit against doctors not giving them a pay raise that went on for 8 fucking years. It's not that I was sitting there around the kitchen table being fundamentally aware of that fight for the better part of a decade myself. That's not why I give a shit about nurses, because the nurses union gave money to my campaign, and so I'm owned by the fucking nurses union. That's the argument. That's the argument he makes, and that's the exact same argument that Cenk Uygur makes all the fucking time. You're bought and fucking paid for. There are no true believers. Your mom's a nurse? I knew that. Yes, my mom is a nurse, an RN her whole life. Right. But again, I'm not kidding. I'm dead serious. If I supported, if I ran for office, when I run for office, and if I got the support of the nurses union, these dumb motherfuckers, like, he wouldn't say it because he doesn't give a shit about, like, he likes to pretend he gives a fuck about nurses or something. That would be a special interest he would be okay with. But Republicans will say the fucking nurses union, they're a special interest. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that whoever the special interest is anybody who disagrees with me. It couldn't be that they agree with my point of view and that I'm running and they're in alignment with what I'm running about, and so therefore they're supporting the campaign. It couldn't possibly be that. It has to be that they just picked me because I'm, easily baitable and I can be bought. Now, why would you think that of everyone else automatically, if not for the fact that that's exactly who you are? That Cenk Uygur, for example, who was a Republican for years, who, when he started the Young Turks, named it after effectively the neo-Nazi group of the Turks, and then effectively like switched over to the left side of things because that's where the money was, and just bloviates about shit as long as the cash comes in. And then as soon as it starts to fade, they suddenly start moderating on certain issues so that they could draw in a controversy thing. So you get right-wingers like, oh, maybe they're flipping over to our side. That, right? Chasing the buck. Halfway between audience capture and then just trying to chase wherever the dollar is currently in the media. And this motherfucker working for RT for a fucking decade and then telling people that they're bought and paid for. Cenk named it after a Rod Stewart song. Horse shit. You don't name it after a Rod Stewart song and deny the Armenian genocide at the same time. That you don't, most people wouldn't even have enough awareness to deny the Armenian genocide in the first place. Yes, he's Turkish. Of course, right? Other than that, I have no opinion. I love you guys. I got to take off. I went long tonight, but that's what happens when you rant. You know what I mean? I have to see. Does my rant thing still work? God damn it. Yeah, I haven't thrown my goddamn rant thing on in a while. I got to work on that. That said, I will see you guys tomorrow for the House Parks radio program Mega Worldwide on these interstreams and webs and whatnot. Like, subscribe, please give a like on the way out if you haven't already liked the stream. Appreciate it. Share the show, share the clips, comment on stuff, all the stuff I'm supposed to say that I never say. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else, and I'll see you tomorrow for the radio show. Okay, good night.